First of all, I would like to thank Invest Monterrey, the government of the state of Nuevo León, EGADE School of Business, of course, the Secretary of Economic Development of the state of Nuevo León, and my good friend Andres Ochoa for inviting me to participate in this very interesting, I would say, program. And well, the good and bad thing of being the last one is that everything has been said. So what I'm going to try to do to you, because a lot of the information I have here has already been presented to you, and I don't want to confuse you with different numbers on something that was put in one way or the other by my predecessors here. So what I'll do, maybe just some closing remarks. I'm going to go through the presentation I had prepared, but I am not going to read everything or to go through every chart that I have here. So I hope you bear with me and agree with me that that would be the best part, especially at this hour. So let me see if I know how to use this. Obviously, no, I don't. Okay, gracias. Well, initially I was going to talk to you about the global automobile industry overview. Second, the Mexican automobile industry. Third, the automobile trends and future. And fourth, the challenges and prospects. Most of this has already been talked right here, but I'm going to stop in some of the charts I have here to give you some of the comments. First, the global automobile industry overview. This number you already saw. I think what is very relevant on this chart is to see the production of all over the world and where does North America stands. And that's where North America has almost 17% of car productions all over the world. And Mexico, as we will see, Mexico has a relevant position worldwide in car production and in car exports. Unfortunately, we do not have the fair amount of internal market sales of new light vehicles in Mexico. And before I go on, let me just clarify to you that the Mexican Association of the Auto Industry only represents manufacturers of new light vehicles and importers of new light vehicles. We do not represent heavy-duty trucks or any other vehicle. So the number of members that I represent is 22. And in my other life, I would say I was president of the American Chamber, like my friend Andres. I was president national-wide of the American Chamber, and at that position, I represented around, 2,400 companies. Believe me, that was easier than 22. That's much easier. When you have only 22 bosses, that's a complicated area. But anyway, I mention this because what I am talking here is about the light vehicles produced that are produced in Mexico. Well, I already mentioned that Mexico is the number 7 producer of autos worldwide. Last year, and this is very relevant, last year we were number 6, and we were moved or removed by South Korea, which pushed us down. That's very relevant because Mexico is in the process of negotiating a free trade agreement with South Korea. And also, as president of this association, I am between crossfire because some of our members would love to have that agreement. Some of our members don't want to have nothing to do with that agreement. So this is a very relevant, not only in the auto industry, but in other industries. This will be a very relevant free trade agreement when the moment comes to sign it. It's very interesting how the production of cars worldwide is moving. And I think it's important to mention here that when you are looking to attract foreign investment, any kind of foreign investment, but especially in the auto industry sector, it is very relevant that first step you ought to take, and this I have discussed with my good friend that unfortunately had to leave, Francisco Gonzalez. first step and most relevant step that you have to take if you want to attract more foreign investment is to really take care of the foreign investment you already have in the country or you already have in your region. Because at least on the auto industry, they are fighting inside or competing inside with other countries within their own brand to attract foreign investment to their country of responsibility. If we don't support those people that have a factory already here in Mexico, and they have to compete with other countries, sometimes the investment that they were trying to attract, that investment is gone to a different country. So again, we have to support the foreign and the national investment that is already in the country, which will be the best way to attract more foreign investment. This is not only related to the auto industry. Oh, okay. Mexico also is the number 5 producer of exporter of light vehicles. That also is very relevant because if we see in these two charts, China is the number 1 producer, but it's not within the 10 first exporters of the auto industry. That's because Mexico, as I already mentioned before, Mexico's internal market is not so big. My personal opinion is that if we consider the size of the Mexican economy, we should be having more sales of new cars every year. But we are not having that is not happening in the country. There are several reasons for that, but the size of our internal market should be larger than what it is right now. Sales of electrical vehicles has been growing has been growing every year in a very high percentage. But the number is still very low. For Mexican standards, we have increases of about sometimes from one year to the other, 100% more sales than the previous year. But you are talking about 40,000 vehicles, which is, and just to give you the general idea, the size of the Mexican market of sales in 1 year of new cars is 1 million. So 40,000 electric vehicles is a very, very small number of cars. And if you saw in the previous presentations, when this change to electrical or clean energy is going to happen, year 2030, year 2035, do you think that within the next 10 years, we will move the number from 40,000 to 1 million? No way. There's no way we do that if we follow the same trend that we are doing, or the same way that we are doing sales and promotions right now. The global results, for a year and a half, a lack of computer chips has affected all the auto industry worldwide, not only in Mexico. And I think this is not new for any of you, or especially for those of you that have been trying to get a new car and you have to be waiting in line for maybe 3 months or even 6 months. That has happened. We are expecting that by the second semester of this year, that market will not be, but that problem will not be solved completely, but we will see a better number of micro components coming into the factories, and of course, we will have more cars, more new cars to sell. The reason for that, I think you already know that, is because of the pandemic. Because of the pandemic, what happened, there was a change on the mobility standards. People stopped buying new cars, people stopped using cars, and people moved to buy more computers, more telephones, cellular phones, tablets, etc. So the micro component market moved to that sector, and when cars manufacturing restarted to be produced in a larger amount, there are not enough micro components in the world. There are only 3 or 4 factories at this moment in Asia that are producing those. There are 2 more factories that are being built in the United States. And as of today, that's the information I have. I don't know if there's another one somewhere else. I know there are other kind of semiconductors that are being manufactured in different countries. But at least the ones that are for the auto industries have that problem. There are a few producers, and the demand in the market has grown big enough that they are not able to comply or to fulfill the demand. The global automobile industry is facing different challenges. First, COVID-19 has affected all sales in the economy of the world, especially, at least that's how we feel, in the auto industry. As I mentioned before, first of all, in Mexico, the auto manufacturers were obligated to stop production for 2 months because the auto industry was not considered as an essential industry. And you may remember that when COVID started, the government asked the industry to stop, got people gathering in the factories, and only those industries that were considered at that time as an essential industry were authorized to continue working. The auto industry stopped for 2 months, and after those 2 months, fortunately enough, they classified as the auto industry as an essential industry, so they were able to restart production and continue. That affected very badly, and unfortunately, we won't see the numbers that we had previous to COVID in sales and production of cars until year 2025, more or less. Of course, a structural decrease in sales in markets all over the world, increasingly restrictive anti-pollution standards that require heavy investment. And this is also very relevant if you are looking at a change in technology and you have to invest in other technology that won't be useful within the next 10 years. That's a very tough decision to take if you are a businessman in the auto manufacturing industry. Also, high uncertainty in the global automobile supply chain. This is not new information. We have faced a lot of problems, especially in logistics, and that has also affected the sales and exports of new cars. And of course, rising prices of auto parts and equipment are hurting margins. There's nothing new on that one. Well, the Mexican automobile industry, I think this is relevant also to know what are we or how are we being seen in the Mexican industry in the country. We are the #1 currency attractor. We are also the 5th world exporter of light vehicles, already mentioned. 32% of manufacturing exports are automobile products. Number 7 vehicle manufacturer in the world. Number 4th world exporter of auto parts. And just to brief you on that one, 3.5 of the total GDP comes from the auto industry. This is also very relevant if you take into consideration that changes in technology are coming. And by changes in technology, what it means is a challenging decision-making process that will take place within the next 10 years. In which country are the manufacturing companies going to establish their electric manufacturing facilities? Mexico, of course, due to these leadership positions, has a relevant opportunity to become and continue being a country of great relevance to the auto industry worldwide. But if we don't do our homework well, and that means all of us in the different aspects in our professional life, or promoting or attracting investment, this could be the opportunity for other countries to attract some of the investment, at least in the auto industry, that is already here in Mexico. The change in technology may or could mean a change on the trends that the auto industry has right now in worldwide. So we hope we are always looking forward how to continue not only retaining the investment that we have in the auto industry, but how to attract more of this investment to our country, and to make sure that when the change in technology comes, we are number one, number two, or number three there for the decision-taking process for the auto industry to consider Mexico as one of the most relevant countries to continue manufacturing cars. This was already mentioned. Well, this is just an example, a chart on how to show exports from manufacturing and exports, which means what is showing here in a very brief detail is that Mexico's exports are 86% of the total production, which means 16% or less stays in the country. So again, what we have to improve is the sales in the internal market, and of course, continue improving the sales for exports. That's why Mexico continues in negotiations with different countries for new free trade agreements, hopefully to increase our sales of cars to those countries. But there are sometimes, like the case I already mentioned in South Korea, which could mean a reduction in our exports to that country. Again, local market, internal market, export and production. Also, I think the export model of Mexico is very, very relevant. Mexico has become a very important vehicle export platform. New vehicle production dynamics are highly dependent on external markets. Already mentioned, 86% of exports of all our production, we depend highly on all the exports. And the export model is a success story that must be complemented by domestic market strengthening. This is also very important. The whole auto industry creates around 1 million direct employees, but very relevant to mention, not only is 1 million of direct employees, I should say 1 million of well-paid employees. The secretary mentioned earlier in a conversation we had was that Nuevo León has a good support of labor, and I always said Mexico shouldn't be considered any longer a country of cheap labor. Mexico can and should and must compete as a country of qualified labor to the world. We have qualified labor and we have competitive labor. That's a difference between cheap labor. And I think that is very relevant because that happens on the auto industry at least on the OEMs. This is direct employees, but if we talk of the different sectors that the auto industry touches in our country, that percentage, that number moves to almost 30 million people because of the different sectors that we touch. An example of auto parts, and you already saw the different presentations, and you already saw a comparison between an electric car and an internal combustion car. These cars could have, the internal combustion car has between 15,000 to 25,000 auto parts. The electric cars, I don't know how many parts they have, but I think no more than maybe 2,000. So that's also a very important and very relevant change and switch on the auto industry that is going to happen in the next years. Well, in the previous one is the direct foreign investment. That's very relevant also because the auto industry, as already mentioned before, is the number one attractor of direct foreign investment. This chart shows a map of the Mexican Republic and where are all the different 37 plants that the auto industry has in our country. And again, I am talking about manufacturing plants, not about the auto parts plants. Well, the OEMs depend a lot in Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 suppliers. They already mentioned, some of the previous presentation already talked about this also, but I think it's very relevant to let you know that when one OEM comes to the country or to one area, it is estimated that it creates or it pulls into the same area around 30 to 40 factories of tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 suppliers. I think that's the value of the great value of attracting a manufacturing facility. The trends for the future already were mentioned, but let me just give you a very brief idea. The most relevant trends are connectivity, autonomy, shared mobility, and electrification. That's where you're going to see the future in the auto industry in the coming years. And again, and I'm going to put it this way, these trends, this change in technology is happening with Mexico or without Mexico. So it's up to us to make sure that we are, and we play a very important, very relevant part of it. We could continue manufacturing cars in Mexico, but if we do not have the infrastructure, the needed infrastructure, which you already saw the numbers of what is called or what will be called the electrolineras, or of all the infrastructure that is needed, if we don't have enough infrastructure, we will see all the cars for exports, and we will see the internal sales being reduced. Again, it's very relevant that we are continue reviewing what is needed and the next steps to take to make Mexico continue being in a leadership position. Reducing carbon footprint, that has been an idea and a target for all the auto manufacturers in Mexico, but not only in their own in their own facilities. They also all the time try to involve their suppliers to do the same, because they have now a commitment. And let's understand that in the future there will be a special import and export duties for those countries that do not comply with the footprint that is required by the global organizations. So that's one of the reasons to motivate not only the auto industry but all the industries to start changing to cleaner energy. The future of transportation, I already mentioned that what are the trends that the auto industry is going to, where this industry is moving to, and these are just a few examples of what a car may look in the near future. Also, the cars that are, I don't know what to say, that levitate or kind of fly a little over the road. The challenges and prospects for the future. The main challenge during the United Nations COP26 conference on climate change, Mexico and 31 other countries, as well as some automakers, agreed to stop permitting the sale of internal combustion engine vehicles after year 2040. And again, we are very easy as a country to go and sign these agreements without even looking at our internal or local or national policies that we still don't have to get there. That is very relevant, and that is a risk for our country. We ought to make sure that our governments make the right policies to get where we have to be in the future. Automakers that agree on the pledge are Ford and General Motors and others. Many European nations have previously decided to ban the sale of ICE vehicles by 2030 and 2035. You already saw some numbers of how Europe is going in that trend. Europe is really going much more in advance than the United States and, of course, Canada and Mexico. The compliance plans to meet targets could comprise the three principal elements: increasing sales, investing in technologies to lower the entire value chain carbon footprint, and pricing and sales and marketing approaches to encourage customers to buy EVs and PHEVs. To change this technology is not only to have the cars there. We need to change the culture of the consumer. We need to provide incentives. Incentives are not only fiscal incentives, but are other kind of incentives. And let me mention some of those, like having special parking spaces for cars that are moved by clean energy, to provide to them free access to toll roads, and some other non-fiscal incentives. So when we sit with the government, especially with the federal government, to talk about incentives, and they get scared, hey, we cannot give any incentives. Hey, not all of these are fiscal incentives, but we need to have some incentives in order to start promoting the sale of more electric cars. What else is required to advance? Of course, the legal frame. We need to have a special legal frame. We need to have the public policies for that. The infrastructure and the communications. That is very relevant, and that is where I think we are lacking of the needed advance at this moment. If we want to get there by year 2030 or to year 2040, we should be working on that already today, and we are not. So that we are late. Also, the incentives I already mentioned, and consumer education. That's also very relevant. We need to increase the sales of electric vehicles so we can lower the price of those vehicles. The USMCA promotes regional integration, but we have faced some issues in the process of implementing the USMCA. As you already maybe have heard, President Biden has established a new policy, or is trying to establish, I should say, a new policy to incentivize the buying of electric cars in the United States. And that is great. The only problem with that is that he is promoting that for cars that are made only in the United States. That's not according to the agreement, to the USMCA agreement. That's one of the problems. And he has also proposed another incentive of $500 for every battery in these cars, but only if that battery was built in the United States. So that's why Mexico and Canada have opposed to these decisions, and still has not been those incentives have not yet been approved by the Congress. Also, at the same time, we are facing an issue with the USMCA in the interpretation of the regional value content of the cars. We are in an international panel right now. We as an association, the AMIA, is part of that international panel. We were authorized to be part of it, and we are supporting the position of Mexico and Canada, which goes differently from the position of the United States, which of course is a harder interpretation of the agreement. The Mexico automobile industry strengths are competitive cost, we already mentioned this, experience, auto parts and supply network, and talent. I think Mexico has developed great talent within the auto industry. We have, I already mentioned this, qualified labor to support the auto industry, and I think we are ready to compete. We are competing already with a lot of countries in the world because of this strength that we have for the auto industry. The prospect for 2022, 2025, well, these are some variants that could affect the auto industry and the development of the auto industry in the world. I'm going to leave you this presentation because what I don't want to do is to go again with the same ideas that are already been presented. And this last chart is talking about what I already mentioned, the policy that President Biden is trying to establish to incentivize the sale of electric cars in the United States, but only those electric cars that are made within the United States. With that, I'm going to, like I mentioned, I leave you this presentation for you. All the information is there, and I thank you very much for your attention until the very last minute.